There was an Irishman by the name of O'Malley, who proposed to his girlfriend on St. Patrick's Day. And he gave her a ring with a synthetic diamond. And the excited young lass showed it to her father, a jeweler, who took one look at it and immediately saw it wasn't real. So after learning this, the young lass returned to her future husband and protested vehemently about his cheapness. He smiled and said, "It was in honor of St. Patrick's Day. I gave you a shamrock." Again, I remind you, you want me to tell these. Oh, dear. All right. So here we are, and we're in the third week of delving in to Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life by Marshall Rosenberg. And I love this. I think I shared with you that this was the most profound class I took in ministerial school because I think I've used it. I've tried to use it the most in my time as a minister and beyond. So, all right, how are you doing with it? Are you noticing a heightened connection, and are you noticing, you're authentic and you're vulnerable and you're having these conversations that are like, ooh. Okay. Once again, we're going to be kind and gentle with ourselves, reminding ourselves that our nature's compassion and love. And I mentioned to you last week that I had the opportunity to experience Marshall Rosenberg in person on the 2006 Unity Cruise, Alaska Cruise. It was awesome. And I shared with you that we had a breakout session with Marshall Rosenberg in the bar. It was great. We transformed the bar into this seminar room, and he's just such a gentle soul. And it was there that I heard him start to talk about nonviolent communication by saying this: do you want to know how to make your life miserable? Blame others. Make others wrong. Make yourself wrong. Think about what others think is wrong with you. So what we are about to, over these few weeks, what we're about to do is to release that tendency to make life miserable in any way, and instead claim our joy and be able to express what's alive in us more freely and joyfully, and to create more authentic relationships. Relationships where we can really be ourselves and that reflect authentic connection. Does that sound good? Okay. So, how are you? How are you? So how many times are you asked that question, or maybe you ask that question, and the response you hear or the response that you give is, okay, fine, good, great, not so good. Okay, that doesn't really communicate though, does it? When someone responds to that question, when someone says, oh, I'm good, often I know I'll just keep going. I'm like, okay, I'll stop if you're in crisis or if you want to talk or what, But it still doesn't really communicate. I'm walking away from that person and I'm not really knowing what's alive in them. I'm not knowing how they're really authentically feeling. And I think sometimes we hesitate to even ask, how are you? Because, people just really don't want to know. They're like, how are you? As it's more like, how are you has turned into, hi. Yeah, right. So, do we really want to know how someone's feeling? Do we really want to know the answer to that question? So, we're looking at feelings. I hear, whoa, whoa, whoa. Sorry, I'm dating myself again, the song. But what is a feeling? It's an emotion, it's an awareness, it's the ability to experience physical sensation. It's an emotional state that we can feel in our physical bodies, isn't it? So really, an emotion is the movement of energy. Okay? Marshall Rosenberg pointed out that in our vocabulary, we have more of a repertoire of words for calling people names than we do to clearly describe our emotional states. Think about that. And he talked about the 21 years that he went through American schools and couldn't recall anyone ever really asking him how he felt. Instead, he was instructed in the right way to think. This teaches us to look outside of ourselves for what we should think and feel rather than look inside ourselves where the true answers lie. We are trained to do right, to think right, to feel right. And he talked about how one day, when he was 9 years old, how he hid in a classroom because there were some boys waiting outside to beat him up. And a teacher saw him hiding and told him to leave the school even after he explained what was going to happen when he did. And the teacher said to him, "Big boys don't get scared." It was also reinforced on his athletic team when the coach valued players who, even with a hurtful injury, continued to play through the pain. It wasn't okay. We see that in the NFL all the time. You know, it's not okay to be hurt and to feel pain. And I think we can all relate to these stories and the emphasis on how when we're young, it can seem like boys don't have room to cry, you know, and also young girls are told they're weak when they do. Right? The messages that we get. The emphasis being on survival and doing instead of really feeling, really knowing, really tapping into what's alive in someone. How are they feeling? And Marshall Rosenberg said that people that he worked with would say, you know, I have lived with my spouse for years, or I've lived with my child for years. I don't know how they really feel. He emphasizes the importance of building our vocabulary around feelings. You know, I don't know about you, but when I was in school, I didn't get a manual on how to express my feelings. So it's extremely valuable to have words that describe how we are authentically feeling, that speak to what's alive in us, that are in no way interpretations of other people. Being able to articulate our feelings helps us to create authentic, connected relationships. It helps us to get our needs met. And it helps resolve conflicts when we let ourselves be vulnerable and honest. Vulnerable and honest. And I have a personal story I want to share with you about that. When I was in a conflict situation, again, I'm telling on myself, with the intent of just to share so we can all maybe see ourselves in each other. Many of you know that I used to be involved with LifeSpring workshops, and they've hence gone out of business. I think they've changed their name. But they were based over in Bethesda, and they are transformational adult learning. And they were the most profound workshops I've ever done to date. And so many changes happened in my life as a result of participating in these trainings, and so I wanted to spread the news. And that's really how the training survived. It was word of mouth. They didn't advertise. They depended on graduates going out and enrolling people. And many of my friends ran for cover when they saw me coming. I was a zealot. Because you know when you get excited about something, you want to tell the whole world, right? So I ended up working for LifeSpring, and part of my responsibility as an employee was to lead guest evenings. And this was my very first guest evening. And I had some pressure, you know, from my boss to really do a good job. Like, I don't put enough of that pressure on myself. And so it was my first guest evening, and then some more pressure was one of my really good friends said, I am bringing one of my friends who has been running from me forever. And I so want her to come to the trainings. And I'm so excited you're leading this guest event because I think you and her will connect. And I'm like, oh, okay. So we're at the guest evening, and it's just awful. I mean, I'm completely in my head. I am this is the trainings, and of course you want to do it, and I wasn't connecting. I wasn't connecting heart to heart. I was I had this voice, you are so, you are just doing terrible. You're not doing this right. And so we took a break, and my friend comes up to me and says, what are you doing? Who are you up there? You're acting really distant and aloof, and you're not connecting with people. You're not joyful. I'm like, I know, I suck. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to get over it. So I think I prayed. I'm just like, okay. So I came back to the guest evening, and I said, okay, everybody, I want to apologize. This is my very first guest event, and I wanted it to be really great, and I have been in my head, and I've been trying to do it right. And can you please forgive me for not being authentic? Can we start over? And they were so sweet. They said, sure. And we ended up having a great night, and about half the folks enrolled that came that were new, which I was really excited about. But I share this with you because I was in my head. I wasn't in my feelings. I was mortified. I was so scared. I was really afraid of bombing. And so I lived right into that vision. And instead of maybe starting the evening going, hi, you guys, this is my first, guest evening, and thank you for being patient with me tonight, and, let's just go with it. Because people are kind. People root for each other. I believe that anyway. So anyway, I shared that with you. So I want to talk to you about I learned a lot from this conversation with Marshall Rosenberg because he started to differentiate what feelings are from thoughts and opinions. So I just would like for you just to think about how you express feelings. So he differentiated between a feeling and a thought with this example. I feel that it wasn't right to play music loud at night. Okay, that was a thought. I feel that when people do that, it's being mean and disruptive on their part. That's an opinion. I feel I am always available to him, or I feel she's being stubborn. The key thing here is, if you can replace the words I feel with I think, then you have a thought or opinion rather than a feeling. And the thing is, when we speak like that, people walk away from us feeling irritated, often, and annoyed because they've been judged. It's a really sneaky way to slip in a judgment and criticism. An example of a difference between a feeling and what we think we are, I feel unable to communicate with him. So the opportunity is, in that sentence, unable. What's the feeling underneath unable? It could be, I feel frustrated when I talk with him. I feel embarrassed. I can't speak clearly. I feel anxious. And another thing, so this is when we go back to I feel fine. I feel okay. Fine, feelings inside not expressed. Have you heard that? I feel fine. How do you feel? Do you feel content? Do you feel peaceful? Do you feel agitated? Do you feel joyful? You see how much more connected a simple conversation could be just when someone says, how are you? Instead of saying, I'm fine, feelings inside not expressed, I feel joyful. I feel peaceful. Okay, an example of the difference between a feeling and how we think and how we interpret others react and behave toward us. How many of us have said, I feel taken for granted? I feel manipulated and controlled. I feel unsupported. These are not actual feelings. These are statements of how we perceive others are behaving or reacting toward us. I just thought that was so insightful. So what are the actual feelings underneath these statements? I feel taken for granted. Maybe I feel sad, I feel weary, maybe hurt, angry. I feel manipulated and controlled. I feel angry. I feel powerless. I feel unsupported. I feel maybe resentful or overwhelmed, lonely. See, that communicates, you see? So when we say to someone, I feel controlled, and what you feel, there's a feeling underneath that. What you really feel is maybe angry, powerless, lonely, tired. Yeah. This is the glitcher. I love this. It is important for us to remember that the cause of our feelings is never about other people's behavior. I'm going to repeat that because I needed to hear that a few times myself. It is important for us to remember that the cause of our feelings is never about other people's behavior. What another person does is the stimulus for what you feel, but not the cause of your feelings. And we've actually talked about this before. It triggers us, but it's not the reason we feel what we do, but the way he invites us to go deeper, because what's underneath that is a need that's not being met. You see? Yeah. What's not being met is the need, and that's what we're responding to. Remember, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me? From our childhood. Back then, even, we realized that regardless of what people do, we're not responsible for how we take it. We were responsible for how we take it and for how we respond. We are responsible, right? It doesn't mean we can't hear hurtful things, but we are always responsible for how we respond. Always. It's not another person's fault how we act or how we respond or how we feel. And this is really interesting when we're in intimate relationships. We can really blame and say, it's your fault I feel this way. You are the cause for me to take this action or for me to feel this way. But in truth, it's because one of our needs are not being met. Okay, so when we communicate our feelings, it gets more real, it gets more authentic, it's risky, and it creates such a deeper connection with each other. So this week, you ready to take this on? Oh, mighty warriors. Mighty nonviolent communication warriors, you are. Okay, so this is what I'm going to invite you to do. Okay, create a feeling inventory. Yeah. And so right this week, how do you feel when you're at work? If you don't work, how do you feel when you're with your friends or when you're in your service environment? How do you feel? Notice what you write down and just check in. According to Marshall Rosenberg, is this an authentic feeling? Or am I stating a thought or an opinion? Okay. Write down how you feel with your family. And practice asking the question, how are you? And really just stand there. Lori, how are you? And I'm just going to stand there. I'm going to wait. Not like, hi, Lori. How are you, Lori?
I'm great. I'm happy.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Okay. Now I can go. She's good. Check the box. Yeah. I think sometimes we ask that question, we go, oh, God, don't tell me. I have. Yeah. And notice when someone asks it of you, how maybe you just want to say, I'm fine. But inside you're going, ah. And I get that sometimes it's not appropriate because you want to express your authentic feelings, with someone that can hold it, and we can also be authentic And even that. I notice I'm feeling hesitant to reveal, or I'm feeling vulnerable right now. I'm feeling poopy. I don't know if that's in the feeling dictionary, but whatever. Yeah. Okay. And practice with your spouse and children, practice with your friends, sharing how you feel. Really. I remember when we learned this in ministerial school, and they made us practice this. And there was a ministerial student that I had like a thing with, and I thought, okay, I said, hello, I'm going to use nonviolent communication right now, and I know that you're going to recognize that I'm doing this, and I don't, my thought is, I don't want you to think I'm, being inauthentic. I just want to stay in my heart. It's my way to stay in my heart because I love you. Because this is all about giving from our heart. Because we love. And really, when we love each other, we want our needs to be met, right? I mean, we can't go out and meet everybody's needs. But, there's fundamental needs, and we're going to talk about that next week. There's fundamental needs that we have, like safety and comfort and love and connection. And when we love people, we want to support them in having that experience, right? Okay. I think that's it. I think that's all of your homework. Is it plenty? Are you ready? Thank you for your willingness. Because really, folks, this is powerful work. It's beautiful work. All right, let's affirm together. I express what is alive in me from my heart of love, and so it is.